Attention, please. Here's something I bet you didn't know. Not all supplements are created equal. At HealthSpan, our omega-3 oil is sustainably sourced from the South Pacific Ocean. We find our turmeric on the southern slopes of India. And our cod liver oil comes from the cold, crisp seas of Greenland. We work hard to seek out the best ingredients for all our supplements because that's the HealthSpan way. We're healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements in-store or direct to your door.
SIM-only plans? There are always so many tempting options. So you jump headfirst into a long contract, which keeps you locked in for 12 months.
Somebody let me out!
At Labara, we offer great value plans and total flexibility. You can get 10 gigs of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £10 a month. And you can change or cancel anytime.
Now I feel free!
Buy now at labara.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to the British Diving National Cup of 2022. We are back here at the Plymouth Life Centre where the event will take place over the next 3 days. A good morning from me, Jack Haslam, and I hope to enjoy some excellent diving with you across the upcoming weekend. We will also have some surprise guest commentators over the weekend, so look out for those people coming up. Kicking us off this morning, we have the women's 1 metre springboard prelim. The girls will take 5 dives, chosen from 5 different directions to perform, with the judges giving scores which will be multiplied by the degree of difficulty to give the total score. We are just about to get the start list coming up, so we'll be able to see the names of the competitors. Notably, we have divers such as Grace Reed, Scarlett Mew Jensen, Yasmin Harper, who is our reigning British national champion, albeit from 2020. Here you can see the women's 1 metre prelim start list. Amy Rollinson in there, who was the Junior European bronze medalist in Group A. And moving on to the next part of the start list, you can see also Tilly Brown, who was a silver medalist in the European Juniors, along with Evie Smith, who also competed at the European Juniors this last year. So just to run over the events this weekend, we start off this morning with the 1 meters, so the women's will be followed by the men's. This afternoon we will have the finals for both events, and we will also have the mixed synchro events for the 3 metre and the 10 metre, and also finish up with the men's 3 metre springboard synchro and the women's 10 metre synchro. So we've got a lot of events coming up today, jam-packed full of action. Let's hope to see some good diving. Today's event will mix 5 dives. I think the highest degree of difficulty we will see is a 2.6, which is a forward 2.5 somersaults with piked. I'm not sure if any of the girls may plan on putting any higher degree of difficulties in if they get through to the final. I know some of them are capable of doing dives such as the reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck, which gives you a degree of difficulty of 3.0. Just to give you an idea of what the judges may be looking at today, we have them looking for starting positions, approaches, takeoff, flights and entry, and they will be judging all those aspects to give a score which will then be multiplied by the degree of difficulty of the dive. Obviously, looking towards the top end, 10 for an excellent dive. It's very unlikely that we're going to see many of those on the 1 meter, as it's not a very common score, but I'm sure some of the girls will be happy with 8 pluses, especially this morning in the prelim. Like I said, it's been 2 years now since our last British national competition, so there'll be a lot of changes from that competition. We'll be able to see some progress that the divers have been making over the last 2 years. Hopefully, we might be able to see some up-and-coming divers break through into the ranks in this competition. Kicking us off this morning, we have Emily Bearpark with an inward 1.5 somersaults piked at degree of difficulty 2.4. Good start by Emily. Get those dives in early. I think a lot of the divers tend to put one of the dives that they're comfortable with at the start of their list, so get yourself into the competition. There we go with Emily with a steady dive, 6.5 from all the judges to count. If you're unfamiliar with the judging process, we have 7 judges. The 2 highest scores and the 2 lowest scores will be taken off. Therefore, the middle 3 scores will count against the degree of difficulty. Second, Summer Radcliffe with the same dive, inward 1.5 somersaults piked. Again, very similar from Summer. Nice steady start. Maybe a little bit shorter vertical compared to Emily, which might mean the scores are slightly low, as you can see there, with a 6, 6 and a 6.5 to count. Switching the start up here, Katie is going for a back 1.5 somersaults piked. I believe she is only one of 3 divers starting with this dive. Most of the others choosing to go with the inward 1.5 somersaults piked. And that'll be why Katie has chosen to start with that dive. Very, very comfortable, good kick out, held the entry nice and well. Judges gone a little bit low with the 6s. Maybe that was to do with a slight leg bend on the start, but very good entry by Katie. Next up, Scarlett Mute-Jensen, of course, qualified for the Olympic Games last year. Her first Olympic Games at a very young age as well, so massive, massive achievement for her, kicking us off on the 1 meter. And it's a little bit too much of adrenaline there going in from Scarlett, I think. Usually her forward and inward entry actions are very, very consistent. I think that one she just overpowered it a little bit this morning and rolled over on the entry. But I'm sure she'll have plenty of time to redeem herself with that one. Some of the girls sometimes, with the feet coming past the board on the inward 1.5, find it quite hard to get the balance correct. I think Scarlett is a diver that is very good at making sure that her jump and balance away from the board is bang on, so she can make this dive so easily, which is why it's just flown over a little bit there. Next up, Amy. She's switching up with a forward 2.5 somersaults piked. Good start there by Amy. That's exactly why we've seen her get the Junior European medal last year. She's a strong diver. Moving up into the senior ranks, can she now try and implement herself on this stage a little bit? Good start. That'll put her into the lead with 50.7. Lauren Halaselka trains at Southampton Diving Club. Great start by Lauren. I think that's the best in 1.5 we've seen so far. Very good balance, great entry, and there you go. First 8 from the judges. One of those scores that our divers will be looking to get today. Get those points on the board. 51.6. Very, very good start from Lauren. Next up, we have Maya again with the inward 1.5 somersaults pike. Her teammate from Lauren in Southampton Diving Academy. And a very similar dive. Again, the balance from those two girls has been bang on, right on the money. And both of the entries are there as well. So you see the 7s there. 1.6.5 to count, which just means it's going to drop below that 50 mark. But again, very good score to start. Yasmin Harper, we have our British national reigning champion from 2020. Can she hold her title today? We will see. We've got some other competitors in there that didn't do that event, such as Grace Reed, who has a repertoire that will definitely put her up in those medals. And it's a very, very nice start from Yasmin. Again, that entry, bang on the money, bang upright, great drill through the water. 7.5, 7.5, 7 to count, 52.8. Great start from Yasmin Harper. We're seeing the same dive here again. Inward 1.5 piked. Elizabeth from City of Leeds Diving Club. And it's a good dive. I really liked how she got the board moving there. She got a lot of ankle rock and made the board do a lot of the work for her. So she got a nice lift into the water. Gave herself plenty of time to do that dive and get the entry. Maybe judges gone a little bit lower just because of the slightly shorter vertical, but not a bad start at all. Next up, Tilly Brown. I've already mentioned that she got a silver medal at the Junior European Championships last year. And there we go. That's probably part of the reason why you can see the form there from Tilly. The toe point there is brilliant. You can almost see no change from the leg to the toe. Perfect line in those legs. Another highly renowned diver, Catherine Torrance, competed in this event at the European Championships last year. I think it'd be safe. I don't think she'd mind me saying that it didn't go quite as well as she would have liked. I know she's a very, very good diver, so she might have been a little bit disappointed not to get up with those medals last year. But that's a very, very nice start from Catherine. Such a strong diver, great shapes, great form, and a great entry there as well. Great start, 52.8, same as Yasmin Harper. On to Evie Smith, again, represented Great Britain at the European Junior Championships, won the Junior Elites in the Group B category last year. It's a good start. It's a little bit nervy, I think. Just backed away from the board a little bit and left it slightly shorter vertical. But again, it's a steady start. No drops and no dramas on that first dive, which is exactly what you're looking to get into the competition. Relax into it, and then you can start to show your stuff. Got our second guest of the event, Claire Cryan. Dives for Ireland, trains in Sheffield, as she has done all her career to date. And it's a great start by Claire. Very consistent on this 1 meter board, usually up and in around the medal categories. Again there we see 51.6, just behind Yasmin and Catherine in first place, but only by 0.8. And here, probably the most experienced diver in the list, Grace Reed. We're back to Commonwealth Games year this year. Grace is currently the reigning 1 meter champion in the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, and it's a good start from Grace. Maybe slightly backed off from the board, which is why her legs have just drifted over from vertical. Once you lean back away from the board, it's quite hard to stop your rotation. That extra little bit of lean gives you more spin speed, and then you have to really be strong putting those legs out to stop them going over from vertical. So again, steady start from Grace, but I know from her scores that she's previously got, it's maybe not quite up there as she may like. Again, very, very similar there. I think sometimes when you lean back away from the board, it's hard to keep those legs upright on the entry. So again, Callie starting with the back 1.5, which is, say, slightly more risky, even though the degree of difficulty is 2.3. Back and reverse dives tend to give a little bit more risk for the divers in general. There are some divers that prefer spinning back and reverse. I think I would put myself in that category when I was diving. And here we have the scores after the first round. As you can see there, a lot of the dives very similar, all around the 2.3, 2.4 mark. I think we only had one dive in the 2.6, which was Amy Rollinson's forward 2.5 somersaults pike. Sees her up the top of the rankings, around with Yasmin Harper and Catherine Torrance at the very top. On to the second round. Emily Bearpark, back 1.5 somersaults piked. Like I said, 2.3 degree of difficulty. And it's a nice and accurate dive there by Emily. Looked a little bit struggle out of the board. The legs came up a little bit bent. They could maybe have just waited for that board a little bit longer and come out of the board nice and straight, which would give the judges a little bit more reason to give those higher marks. But again, 6, 6.5, 6.5 to count. Very steady scores there. Summer Radcliffe, the same dive. Very nicely done there by Summer. I think what I'd said before about leaning back away from the board, Summer had a little bit of lean, but she put her feet out a little bit earlier, held them strong, and got a very, very nice entry through the water. So very nice dive there by Summer, great entry. Katie Burton with the first twist dive that we'll see today. Out of the 5 dives, we have to get 1 in each direction, that being forward, back, reverse, inward, and twist. And there, Katie with her first twist dive of the event. Forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist. Nice and accurate through the water. Maybe a little bit more height and form could get those extra marks. But again, we've not seen any big drops yet in this competition, so long may that continue. Scarlett, a little bit of an unexpected drop in the first round. Forward 2.5 somersaults piked with the highest degree of difficulty of the event, 2.6. That's more like it from Scarlett. She's so strong in that hurdle step. Even though it's slightly back off the end, she holds herself really nice and straight, and then it gives you the chance to go up in the air, get into a nice tight pike shape, and give you plenty of time to get that entry. Great dive there by Scarlett. Amy Rollinson, forward 1.5 somersaults, 2 twists. So she has put her 2.6 degree of difficulties at the very start of her list. And another good dive, slightly over from vertical, which might mean the judges just penalise her a little bit. But again, very strong on the board. She looks like a very strong girl in this 1 metre. She can do these dives comfortably. Maybe we might even be able to see her in the future get a little bit more on the degree of difficulty. Nice dive there by Lauren. That's what we want to see on the kickouts. When she's come out of that pike shape there, her hands are on her legs, showing the control that she's got out of the air. And then she just looks back, puts her hands on the water with a great rip entry. 6.5 to count. Maybe personally think that was slightly harsh because the rip entry was very, very nice, but good dive from Lauren. Onto her teammate Maya, forward 2.5 somersaults pike. Good dive there from Maya. The hurdle step gives a lot of complexity to the 1 meter and the 3 meter. I think often the hurdle step dives give the divers a little bit more nerves because obviously the approach is a massive part of the dive. If you get the approach wrong, then the dive is going to most likely follow. So those hurdle steps can always be a challenge for the divers. Our current leader after the first round, Yasmin Harper. Second round dive is a back 1.5 somersaults with pike. And it's a nice dive by Yasmin. Makes this dive very easily. That's probably the best balance of any back 1.5 we've seen yet today. She stands up nice and tall. Is a good distance away from the board. Just again lets it drift slightly over from vertical. So I do some of these very nice this morning in training. But again, 6.5s, good scores. On to Elizabeth Powley from City of Leeds Diving Club. The same dive again, nice entry. Maybe the shape was not quite as tight as Yasmin's, so the judges might see that and give it a little bit less in the scores. But a very similar dive, another good entry. One thing that's good about all these divers doing very similar dives is it gives you a good chance to compare each of them, the differences, and then judges maybe can give the extra half marks. Oh, that's what we talked about with the hurdle steps. The risk is huge there. She's gone in, attack the hurdle step, which is what you've got to do. You've got to be brave and go after that start, but unfortunately, foot has just slipped off the side of the board for Tilly. It's a real shame because she's obviously got a lot of ability on this 1 meter diving board. Like I've said, European Junior silver medalist. It's a real shame that might make getting into the final a huge task now for Tilly. Our joint leader, Catherine Torrance, following the same dive order as her joint leader, Yasmin, with a back 1.5. And again, very nice from Catherine. Held that entry beautifully. Legs out, strong. Controlled her feet where they were going and bang upright. 777 to count, 48.3. Great dive from Catherine. Back up to the 2.6s for Evie. Forward 2.5 somersaults piked. Good save on the end there. I thought for a second that it might just go flying over from vertical, but she managed to stop the rotation, get it upright, and that's why we've saved the judges' scores to the 6s, 5.5. On the start, she just put her head down a little bit, which sometimes makes your awareness go. So when you're spinning around, there's different ways to track what position you're in. Some people spot with their eyes. Some people feel when their head and hips have tilted upside down, and then that's when you know how to come out of these shapes. So there, Tilly just put her head down a little bit, meaning she's lost it. Claire Cryan, another great dive, bang upright, good rip. Notice Claire's got both her ankles taped up, something you often see with some of the Chinese divers, which is interesting. Grace Reed. First reverse 1.5 of the competition, and very well executed from Grace. I'm not sure whether her toes were slightly over the end of the board there. It looked like a little bit of a panic as she stepped down from a hurdle, but she held it so well. Went miles up in that air, which is why you see those 8s from the judges. So impressive when you can see a diver just fly up in the air, give herself loads of time, come out early and just make the dive look easy. Callie Eagleston, last diver of our second round, again with the same dive as Grace. And very well done there from Callie. Saved that very well. I don't know if you could see the toes, as our friend Leon Taylor would say, hanging 10 over the edge of the 1 meter board. but great entry, really, really well recovered there from Kelly. Great dive to finish off the second round. So here are our results after the second round. We've got a bit of a change around the top. Catherine has remained in first place, but the second place and third place has changed a little bit. Yasmin Harper has dropped down slightly. Grace Reed has got herself back up to the second place. Claire Cryan, with 2 very consistent dives, got herself into the third place. So our third reverse 1.5 somersaults pike in a row. Emily Bearpark to start off round 3. This one is 2.4 degree of difficulty, the same as the number 1.5 pike. Very different dive though. And it's well executed by Emily. I think similar to her back 1.5 pike, one thing she could maybe work on is just getting those legs straight out of the board. But one thing she doesn't need to work on are those entries, because they were brilliant through the water, great rip. That's one of the main things the judges might be looking for. For 2.5 somersaults pike from Summer, currently in 11th position. And that will hopefully bump her up the standings a little bit. Great entry through the water. The pike shape could be a little bit tighter. You can see a little bit of a gap between her chest and her legs, which is why the judges might penalise it a little bit. They want to see your legs flat on your chest in that pike shape. But she did really well with that entry. And with a 2.66 degree of difficulty, it's going to put some scores on the board. Katie with another reverse 1.5. That's the third reverse 1.5 that we've seen where the toes slightly over the end of the board. So that's one of the big risks with a reverse 1.5. It's relatively easy for most of these girls. So when they're doing the dive, they want to stand up nice and tall. But if your toes are over the end of the board, it makes it very difficult to do that. Scarlett Mew Jensen with a back 1.5 somersaults pike. Of course, she went to the Olympics last year on the 3 metre. The 1 metre is not currently an Olympic discipline, although this year we do have the Commonwealth Games and European Championships, which these girls will be able to compete in. It's the second dive that Scarlett has gone a little bit over vertical on, which would be a real shame for her, because we all know how good a diver she is. Just letting those scores slip a little bit, which on the 1 metre for the girls is very difficult, because with them all having the same degree of difficulties within reason, there's not much opportunity to get some big scores and catch up on the girls. So if you do drop, it's very difficult to get yourself back in the position. Amy with the same dive, back 1.5 somersaults pike. And very well executed. Again, she was quite fast, but the difference between that one and Scarlett, she just put her feet out a little bit earlier, held the entry, nice and upright. Those feet just came apart a little bit towards the end of the dive. So when you see her hit the water, those feet were just slightly apart, which is why the judges might not have gone with those 7s. And to Lauren. Great start from Lauren. That looked like it would fly around for a reverse 2.5 on 3 metre. Unfortunately, on the 1 metre, when you do get a start as good as that, you need to be really confident and put those feet down early. Come out of the shape, point your feet at the water, and then let your somersault float round and land upright. Just gone slightly over a vertical for Lauren. Teammates following each other here. Maya Cutty of Southampton Diving Academy. Back 1.5 somersaults pike, so very similar to the reverse. Obviously, you don't have the complexity of the hurdle step add-in. So that's why we go from 2.3 degree of difficulty to 2.4. Spin in reverse, you get those extra degree of difficulty marks. Yasmin Harper with the reverse 1.5 somersaults pike. Seen her do some of these very nicely in training this morning. That's what we're talking about. The hurdle step there, bang on, straight up in the air. Great kick out and a good entry. Maybe slightly over from vertical, but she knee saved through the water to keep that splash down. giving us some good scores. That'll put her back up towards the top of the rankings. Another City of Leeds diver here, Elizabeth Powley. With the same dive, reverse 1/2 somersault pike. And another good hurdle from Elizabeth. It's a shame because she put her feet out right in the right place, just didn't reach those arms back fully. Almost looked like she was slightly unsure of where the water was, which is why we've gone down to the 5 marks. Just needed to reach those arms back a little bit more, make sure it comes all the way to upright. In general, these divers will be looking for around the 7 to 8 marks for these dives in the prelim. Maybe expect them to step up the marks a little bit for the final. Tilly Brown with another good dive, very consistent. Unfortunately, last round didn't go as she would have liked. With the hurdle step just going over the end of the board. But I know from experience, when you have a dive that doesn't go to plan, it's very important that the next dive you remain focused and just forget about it and move on to the next one, which she's done there very well. Catherine Torrance, reverse 1/2 pike. Again, Catherine, very consistent this morning. Great height out of the board. I thought she might find it difficult to stop that because it was very high, quite fast, but again, she's got the strength, the core strength to hold her legs fine, keep the upright entry. Great dive from Catherine. I think that would probably keep her up at the top of the rankings. Evie Smith. Great dive from Evie. Lovely entry through the water. Claire Cryan currently in 3rd place after the first 2 rounds. Performing a reverse 1/2 somersaults piked, 2.4 degree of difficulty. Oh, what a lovely entry that is from Claire. Absolutely no splash there. The judges have penalised her a little bit. I think that would mainly be because when she left the board, her legs were slightly bent, which is why we're only seeing the 7s. Of course, still a very, very good score. She'll be happy with that, but that entry probably deserved more. The reason we've seen the slightly lower scores because of those bent legs. Grace Reed, forward 1/2 somersaults, 2 twists. It's a good dive from Grace. Generally, the forward to inward dives, forward, back, reverse, and inward, will all be the same from the girls today, with some minor changes. It is the twist dive that sees a few different options. So there we have the forward 1/2 somersaults with 2 twists from Grace. We can also see a forward 1/2 somersaults with 1 twist. We've seen a reverse 1/2 somersaults with 1.5 twists. So that's where we get a bit of variety for the girls. Callie finishing off the round with a very nice forward 2.5. I know Callie's been at this event now for a good few years. Started off the event when she was an absolutely tiny girl. Now she's developed, can use that springboard a little bit more. Not quite as spinny as she used to be, but still got some good speed in that shape there. And here we have the rankings after 3 rounds. Again, Catherine slightly up in that lead. Got a 5.9 lead now on Claire Cryan in 2nd. Grace Reed in 3rd. Yasmin Harp in 4th. We're looking for the top 8 divers to make it through to the final, as well as 2 guests if they come in that top 8. Starting off the 4th round of dives, Emily Bear Park. Forward 2.5 somersaults pike, degree of difficulty 2.6. And that's the first real drop we've seen today. Again, this is the highest degree of difficulty dive in the competition. So with that higher degree of difficulty comes more risk, means the dive is harder. Emily's just struggled to get all that dive to fit in, which is why she's landed short of vertical. It was a very nice shape, which usually means you can get a little bit more speed, but just didn't quite have the height to finish the dive. Summer with a very nice dive. Sometimes on this reverse 1.5, when you get up in the air and you're spinning fast, it's hard to stop, but Summer's put her feet out very strong, knows exactly where the water is, and that's why we see 7s. To get those higher marks, maybe we need a little bit of a tight shape, a little bit more toe point, just get those elegance marks from the judges. Next up, Katie Burton. The forward 2.5 somersaults piked. Nice and accurate from Katie. Going to get steady marks from the judges. 5.5, 6s. 3 5.5s to count. Again, cutting off those 2 highest scores and 2 lowest scores. Now, Scarlett. Can she redeem herself a little bit? Currently just outside the places to get into the final. It's only just over 10 points. That's a little bit more like it. Still not quite as clean through the water as she might like. She's so strong, goes miles up in the air. 6.5 there. 2 6.5s and a 6 to count. It's 45 points. Not really going to make any ground up, but it puts the pressure on the other divers higher up to not drop their dives. If they do so, then we might see her up in those rankings. Amy Rowlinson with the same dive. Ooh, slightly short of vertical. Again, she's so high up in the air. So I think that's why she just got a little bit overconfident, put those feet out slightly early. Sometimes when you're up in that air, like I've said before, you need to stop the dive. Amy's tried to do that, but unfortunately stopped it too much. Need to get those arms and eyes back to the water just to pull it all the way around to vertical. Another variation of the twist dive. Forwards 1.5 somersaults with 1 twist from Lauren. Very nicely executed. The hurdle step was a little bit over the end of the board, which is why we don't see quite as much height. Just holding onto that board, making sure she doesn't slip like we've seen one of the other divers unfortunately do earlier on in the event. Maya, reverse 1.5 somersaults pike, 2.4. Nicely done from Maya. I wasn't sure whether she was going to get all the way around there. When she kicked her feet out, it looked like they'd stopped dead, but just reached those arms back enough just to make sure she got upright, get those scores from the judges. And here's the first of the reverse twisting dives that we will see. Yasmin Harper. This is 2.6 degree of difficulty. Same as the forward 1.5 somersaults with 2 twists. So nothing in the degree of difficulty, a little bit different in the look of the dive. And it's nice from Yasmin. Sometimes on this dive, I've seen her legs come up so fast out of the board, which makes the dive look easy, but then again, it's hard to stop in the end. She stopped that very well in the end, lost those feet slightly through the water, which I think is why the judges have penalised her a little bit with the 6.5s. But again, it's another good score from Yasmin. You can see why she is our reigning champion. Elizabeth, forward 1.5 somersaults, 2 twists, same degree of difficulty, 2.6. And that's the risk with this dive. Because you're fitting in 2 twists in such a short period of time, it's hard to stop those twists. So you see Elizabeth just over-rotates on that twist, and that's why the judges have heavily penalised her there. It's unfortunate for Elizabeth. It is a tough dive to do. You've got to stand it up really, really high up in the air, but make sure it's relatively slow so you can get the twists in and stop the rotation. Great entry there from Tilly. The legs came up a little bit bent out of the board. I think the hurdle step was a little bit nervous, understandably. But great entry. That first judge, I think, has heavily penalised the knee bend out of the board. And then the third judge has seen the entry and thought, I'll give that a 7. So a little bit of a mix there. Our current leader with the second reversed 1.5 somersaults with 1.5 twists of the competition. Again, 2.6 degree of difficulty. And it's a good dive from Catherine. Just looked a little bit early from that entry. Just looked like she was trying to get to the water too soon. So she needed to just be a little bit more confident, comfortable, and just wait to get that somersault all the way around to upright. She's so strong. She's got so much height and movement out of that board. She needs to be a little bit more patient like she normally is. She's known for having one of the best board timings around the whole world, let alone the country. So just got to make sure she waits for it. Ooh, another very, very nice entry there. Brilliant dive from Evie. Likes a little bit of height, which is why we're not going to see any massive scores. But very nicely executed, neat and tidy, and good through the water. Claire Cryan. So we're seeing the same direction of twist, just with one less twist here. Forward one half somersaults with one twist. Degree of difficulty goes to 2.2 compared to 2.6, so it's quite a big drop, but with those execution scores, you can make that up. And it's nicely executed from Claire. Slightly over from vertical. Maybe she would expect a little bit higher in the scores. She's a very experienced diver now. Very good on the 1 meter board. Great entries. Slightly over from vertical, which is why we only seen the 6.5s. But again, in this prelim this morning, just got to make sure you get steady diving through to the final, and you can show your stuff later on. Grace Reed, inward one half somersaults piked. Good dive from Grace. Interesting that she puts this fourth in her list. We saw a lot of the divers start with it. I think a couple may finish with it because it's generally a dive that people are comfortable with. In fact, I say that there's only 2 people that finish with an inward 1.5 somersaults pike. A lot of the other divers seem to have put a higher degree of difficulty towards the end. Our final diver of the round, Callie, inward 1.5 somersaults pike again. And a very nicely executed. It was a little bit slow on the start. I wasn't sure whether it was going to get all the way around to vertical, but the shape was beautiful, the leg line was beautiful, and the entry was beautiful. So we have good scores. I think with a little bit more height, we could have been seeing one of the highest scoring inward 1.5s there, because the dive itself was very elegant. Catherine Torrance at the top of the standings still. Grace Reed has made up a couple of points on her. Yasmin Harper just 4 points behind her as well. Very tight at the top. There is not much in this event at all. It's going to be tight with the final qualification. We have Amy, who just missed out in 2020, which she'll have been very disappointed with. And then obviously she has gone on to do very well at the junior events on 1 meter. So we're hoping to see that transfer to the senior nationals. She's just currently on the borderline of the finals. Emily there with the forward 1.5 somersaults 2 twists. One of the challenges of a twisting dive is to keep your feet together. When you're twisting, the forces pulling your feet apart are greater than when you're doing somersaults. So as you see there, when Emily's twisting round, her legs have just split, and that's why the judges have gone with those lower marks. Another forward 1.5 somersaults 2 twists. It's quite a common dive for this last round. And there we go again. Slightly better with the legs, so we're going to see a little bit higher scores, but the rotation on the entry is slightly over-rotated from the twist. So again, get slightly penalised. We're only seeing the 5s compared with a lot of the 6s, 7s that we've seen earlier on in the competition. But this is probably the riskiest dive, the forward 1.5 somersaults 2 twists. Next, Katie, inward 1.5 somersaults piked. 2.4, slightly lower in the degree of difficulty. But steady dive to finish on from Katie. Slightly strange arm swing. Arms bent a little bit on the start, which the judges will have noticed and considered when putting their scores in. Scarlett might be a shock of the morning, really. Our most recent Olympian, or one of our most recent Olympians. Forward 1.5 somersaults 1 twist, the lower degree of difficulty twist dive. It's beautifully executed though by Scarlett. You might see some 7.5, 8 marks there from the judges. Just 1-8, the rest have gone with 7s. So we have 46, 215. Be interesting to see if that will be enough to get her through to the final. It's going to be a close one. Amy right on the borderline as well, finishing up and in 1.5 somersaults piked. Usually a steady dive for her. So hopefully see it executed well. And it is executed very well. Great balance from the board, nice and high, great entry. So the judges are really rewarding that. 7.5 to count, 54 points. I think that might just be enough for Amy. We will see as the event continues. Another 2.6 dive. Lauren with a 14.5 somersaults pike. Nice dive from Lauren. Looked a little bit unsure on the come out. She came out and she looked like she was going to grab her hands and then realised she had a little bit more time. But she saved it well. Got through the water with very little splash. Maybe the judges have just gone for the 6, 6.5 rather than the 7s. It's a little bit loud on the board. I don't know if you could hear on the stream a little stamp with her feet, which might have just influenced the judges. Maya with the reverse twisting option. Oh no, again, the hurdle step, such a horrible part of diving. When it doesn't go right, there's not much you can do. And it looks easy walking down a board, but I can tell you right now, it is definitely not. When you're going down and you've got to attack the springboard and try and jump as high as you can on a moving surface, it is very, very difficult. It's a real shame there from Maya. Fortunately, that's our second dive that we've seen not quite get off the end of the board. Yasmin Harper, 14.5 somersaults pike to finish her event. Again, the hurdle step's causing all sorts of issues for some of the girls. Slightly over the end of the board with the toes. She stood it up really, really well, but I think in her head she might have just thought the hurdle step's not gone as well as planned. Hold on a little bit longer, and that's why she's held on, rotated over from vertical, and not quite got the score she wants. But she's had a good event this morning. She'll be safely through to the final, where she can, again, show her stuff. Elizabeth with the same dive. Similar. Over from vertical. Good hurdle step from Elizabeth. Slightly opening that shape. You can see a little bit of a gap between her chest and her legs. To get those higher scores, you want to see a flat pike shape, which will also make her spin faster, make the dive finish a little bit higher, which the judges are looking for. Tilly Brown with a forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist. Nicely executed dive from Tilly to finish. Again, Junior Europeans, Group B medalist last year. So that was a great achievement for her. Bit of a shame with that second round dive. It's going to make her miss out on the final, but good, strong dive to finish. Our leader throughout the whole event, round 1, 2, 3, and 4, Catherine Torrance has been at the top of those rankings. Finish off the event with a 14.5 somersaults piked. And it's a very nice finish as well from Catherine. Looked very comfortable there this morning. 2:56 is a very good score for a 1 metre. I know that would have medalled at a European Championships last year. I think the medal was around 2:54, so a prelim score to get that is very, very impressive. Usually the judges are a little bit harsher in the prelim, rightly or wrongly. Evie Smith, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist. Nicely executed again from Evie. Looked great in the air. It's a shame about that entry because the elegance in the air was all there. Shapes were nice, leg form was nice. Just lifted that chest a little bit on the entry and lost her feet, which just meant that those scores have dropped slightly. But again, 6-6, 6.5 to count from the judges. Claire Cryan, 14.5 somersaults piked to finish up. As a guest, She needs to come in the top 8 to qualify, which at the moment is looking very comfortable. And I think we'll be very comfortable. Great dive from Claire. I wasn't sure whether she was, when she stepped down from her hurdle, she looked a little bit unsure, but then she landed on the end, got it up in the air, nice and high, came out comfortably. Great entry. It's normally a very consistent dive for Claire, and she's shown it again. Great diving. Up to second place, 14 points behind Catherine Torrance. Our Commonwealth Games 2018 champion on 1 metre, Grace Reed. Full 2.5 somersaults piked. Very nicely executed again. Similar to Claire, maybe slightly better in the balance, not quite as clean through the water. Great dive. The height impressed the judges, and we see the 7.5s, 2 8s in there, unfortunately, as the top 2 scores don't count. Our last diver of the morning, Callie Eaglestone. Forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist. And a nice dive to finish the event. Again from Callie, a little bit low on the dive, but great form, great entry, very neat and tidy. Just needs to work on that height, maybe give her a little bit more opportunity to get those higher scores. So, let's wait and see for the results. And here we have the scores. Catherine Torrance, our 1 metre prelim winner, only by 1 point over Grace Reed. It's top 8 to the final with the guests, so we will have 10 total this morning with Lauren and Claire in there. There, a little bit lower down. Scarlett has just squeezed in there, so she'll be eager to make up this afternoon. Unfortunately, Katie just missed out by 9 points. Emily there, dropped down. So good diving this morning from the girls, very impressive. Sometimes the 1 metre can see a few misses. We saw a couple of drop dives in there, but hopefully we will see similar from the boys. So up next, we have the men's 1 metre prelim. This time we see 6 dives for the boys. So we still have to cover the 5 directions, but this time we get a choice for the 6th dive, so they can make sure they can pick any one of a number of dives to add to their list. So we might see a little bit more variety in this event. Later on today, we have the mixed 3 metre synchro and the mixed 10 metre synchro, which will run together. In session 3, we have the finals of the women's event, which we have just seen, and the upcoming men's 1 metre prelim. And to conclude the day, we have the women's 10 metre synchro and the men's 3 metre synchro. You can see on your screen there the rest of the events over the weekend. We will be covering all of the events for the Diving Cup. So we're going to take a short break now. Join us back at 11:30 for the men's 1 metre springboard preliminary.
Attention, please. Here's something I bet you didn't know. Not all supplements are created equal. At Healthspan, our omega-3 oil is sustainably sourced from the South Pacific Ocean. We find our turmeric on the southern slopes of India, and our cod liver oil comes from the cold, crisp seas of Greenland. We work hard to seek out the best ingredients for all our supplements because that's the Healthspan way. We're healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements in-store or direct to your door.
SIM-only plans? There are always so many tempting options. So you jump headfirst into a long contract, which keeps you locked in for 12 months.
Somebody let me out!
At Labara, we offer great value plans and total flexibility. You can get 10 gigs of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £10 a month. And you can change or cancel anytime.
Now I feel free!
Buy now at labara.co.uk.
Attention, please. Here's something I bet you didn't know. Not all supplements are created equal. At HealthSpan, our omega-3 oil is sustainably sourced from the South Pacific Ocean. We find our turmeric on the southern slopes of India, and our cod liver oil comes from the cold, crisp seas of Greenland. We work hard to seek out the best ingredients for all our supplements because that's the HealthSpan way. We're healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements in-store or direct to your door.
SIM-only plans? There are always so many tempting options. So you jump headfirst into a long contract, which keeps you locked in for 12 months.
Somebody let me out!
At Labara, we offer great Prelim plans and total flexibility. You can get 10 gigs of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £10 a month. And you can change or cancel anytime.
Now I feel free.
Buy now at labara.co.uk.
Welcome back to the British National Diving Cup of 2022. Our next event up is the men's 1 metre springboard preliminary. We've got a star-studded list this morning. Divers such as Yona Night Wisdom, I guess from Jamaica, Jack Law, James Heatley, Anthony Harding, Jordan Holden are all very experienced at this level. Nathan Bull, our first diver from Southampton. Anthony Harding, City of Leeds Diving Club. Hayden Raymond, Dive London, and Southend Diving Club is representing. Yona Night Wisdom, of course, trains up in Edinburgh now, originally trained down in Leeds, representing Jamaica. Jordan Holden, my hometown club in City of Sheffield Diving Club. Of course, our Olympic champion, silver medalist and bronze medalist Jack Law. Matthew Dixon, now diving at Dive London, formerly of Plymouth. Hugo Thomas, again, Dive London. And the third teammate, Tyler Humphreys of London too. James Heatley had an amazing year last year, representing Edinburgh Diving Club. Leon Baker, again, some great junior performances from Leon last year. Can he show him on the senior stage? Danny Mabbott, Edinburgh, been training alongside the likes of James, Yona and Ross coming up later. Maxwell Spencer, Dive London Aquatics Club. Ross Beattie from Edinburgh Diving Club. Our second guest, Juho Juntila from Diving Team Turat. Ben Cutmore, Dive London. From Southampton Diving Academy, we have Ollie Casley. Our third guest of the event, also representing City of Leeds, is Jake Passmore. And our last diver of the event, also representing City of Leeds, is Joseph Nichol. So there we go, 19 divers in this event. We're going to see plenty of dives. In contrast to the girls, we have 6 dives here from the boys, so we have an extra dive for them to choose from. We're going to see a variety of dives here this morning. So in the girls' event, generally the forward, back, reverse and inward dives were the same. The twisting dive changed a little bit. This morning in the boys, we will see a little bit more of a variety. For the forward dives, ranging between the 2.5 and the 3.5. Back dives between 1.5 and 2.5. And then similar down the rest of the list. We've got some high degree of difficulty dives this morning. The highest degree of difficulty is the in-between-half somersaults piked, I believe, at 3.4 degree of difficulty. The women this morning, the highest degree of difficulty was 2.6, so you can see the jump up in complexity. That, however, does mean that we will see a lot more risk in these dives, though. So we expect to see some higher scoring dives, but there is potential that we see some dives that don't go quite as well. So we look forward to seeing that. I think Yona and James Heatley, I believe, have the highest degree of difficulty lists at a total of 18.9. So that's adding together all the degrees of difficulty for each dive. We also have Jack Law, obviously our highest performing diver in the event, with a gold, a silver and a bronze Olympic medal. So kicking us off this morning, Nathan Bull will start. And we just get ready for the boys to start the event. Obviously there's been a couple of years now since this last event. Back in 2020, Jordan Holden took the title. Again, another diver with a high degree of difficulty list, and also one of the strongest and spinniest divers in the competition. So he makes these dives very easily down on 1 meter. The challenge is whether they can control the entries, get the high execution marks to match those high degrees of difficulty. Be expecting some good scores here on the 1 meter. Scores of up to 400 have won this event in the past. We won't be seeing that in this morning's event, I would not expect. If we do, we'll have had a very, very good prelim. Prelim events tend to be a little bit lower in the scoring. The reasoning for that is I'm not quite sure. The judges maybe get a little bit more excited for the finals when the pressures and stakes are a little bit higher. So to run you through, for anyone that doesn't know, some of the dive numbers, we have the first number in any dive number denotes the direction. So it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. They are forward, back, reverse, inward, and twist. Also on the platforms, which we'll see later on in the weekend, there is a 6, which is an arm stand dive. The second number generally for the front to inward is a 0. However, we will see a very rare dive in this event, which is a flying dive, which the second number is a 1 instead of a 0. So that's a flying inward 1.5 somersaults pike that we will see from Anthony Harding, which again is it's an uncommon dive, but I think it's a dive that some people are starting to use a little bit more because it's got a high degree of difficulty for the amount of somersaults in there. To kick us off this morning, we have Nathan Bull from Southampton Diving Academy with a forward 2.5 somersaults piked. And it's a great start from Nathan. Excellent entry through the water, almost no splash whatsoever. Hardly any space between those legs and chest in the pike shape. Great form as well. 7s from the judges. Personally would say that was a little bit harsh, maybe. Just needed a little bit more height. But getting into the competition might be the reason why. Anthony Harding, strange dive to start open with. Reverse 1.5 somersaults, 2.5 twists. But that might be why, because that is a very, very nice dive from Anthony. If he finds this dive pretty easy, you tend to start off with a dive that you're confident on. Get yourself into the competition, relax yourself. That might be why Anthony started there. 63 points, great start. This is the dive that we saw a lot of the girls open up with this morning, the inward 1.5 somersaults piked. Degree of difficulty of 2.4. A little bit of a drop down from what we've just seen from Anthony at 3.0. Well executed though from Hayden. You'd expect to see a little bit more height out of the board this morning from the boys. As you can probably tell with the physiques. They're all very strong boys. They can jump extremely high, namely this man. One of the only divers that puts the board in the water every time he pushes, which gives you an idea of how strong his legs are. Great dive from Yona as well. Same as Anthony, starting off with the reverse 1.5 somersaults with 2.5 twists. That's the 5 is the twisting dive, the 3 is the reverse, the second 3 is the 1.5 somersaults, and the 5 is the 2.5 twists. So that's how the dive number works. Yona with a beautiful dive there, excellent entry. A little bit of a challenge for Yona there is just to keep those feet together to get even higher marks, but great start from Yona. Jordan Holden, our reigning champion, 405C in with 2.5 somersaults tucked. Great start from Jordan. We've had a great start to this event so far. 5 dives in, 7.5s from the judges to count there. 8 there, 3.1 degree of difficulty there. That's the highest degree of difficulty so far. Great dive from Jordan. Now, Jack Law, our reigning Olympic bronze medalist on the 3 meter. Of course, the 1 meter isn't an Olympic discipline, so no competing there for Jack. However, the Commonwealth Games does come up this year. Great dive from Jack. Easy. Back 2.5 somersaults tuck is not an easy dive to make. Obviously, you don't have the hurdle step to give you that extra height, so you have to really use those legs to jump up in the air. Jack, obviously, is one of the strongest divers in the world. One of the most powerful divers. Makes dives with ease. Matthew Dixon, 2.5 somersaults piked. Not generally known for his springboard diving. Very nice dive, though. Matthew is always very consistent when he's diving on platform. The springboard gives you extra little bits of complexity. He, however, has broken his hand, so he won't be diving on the platform this weekend, just doing the 1 meter. So we'll get to see his diving exploits, thankfully. Unfortunately, it's just down on the 1 meter. Next up, Hugo Thomas with a back 1.5 somersaults piked. 2.3 is the lowest degree of difficulty dive we will see in this event this morning, I think. Well, nicely executed there from Hugo. So with the boys being very strong in the main, this dive's quite an easy one. So the challenge there is to make sure you don't overpower it and go over from vertical. Hugo's done that really well, held his legs strong with a good finish. His teammate Tyler, junior European champion this year. Very nice dive again from Tyler. Always impressed with Tyler's elegance when he's diving. His form is brilliant. His entries are brilliant. And at 19, still only very young as well, so lots to come from Tyler. Now then, James Heatley. Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, 3.2 degree of difficulty. So starting off with one of the higher ones that we're going to see today. And it's a great start from James. He's so consistent. His hurdle steps always look really strong. Gives him every chance to get up in the air, fit all those somersaults in. Of course, 2.5 somersaults and 1 twist is a lot of dive to fit in on just the 1 meter. James has got it. 3.2, great start. Leon Baker of Southampton, 2.5 somersaults piked. Good dive from Leon. You can see how early he came out of his pike shape there. Gives you an idea that he finds this dive quite easy. Obviously at 2.6 degree of difficulty, it is one of the lower degree of difficulty dives in the competition, but that's why you need to make sure you execute it very well. Danny Mabbott can say he's grown and strengthened a lot since we last saw him on this stage. Obviously 2 years is a long time for a lot of these athletes. And it's a great start from Danny. 2.3 degree of difficulty on the back 1.5, so relatively low in those terms, but great execution. Slightly far away from the board, which is why the judges might have only given it 6.5, but the dive itself, a great form and a good entry. Maxwell Spencer with an inward 1.5 somersaults piked. Again, there's a trade-off. Sometimes people like to start with the standing dive. Hurdle steps obviously give that extra complexity, so it's a little bit more nervous, but Maxwell's chosen to go with it in 1.5, standing start, and that's why obviously very comfortable with it. Steady dive to start from Maxwell. Ross Beattie up in Edinburgh. Forward 2.5 somersaults pike, training with the likes of Yona and James Heatley, so can only be good to learn off those boys, very experienced. Also Ross, in his physical stature, is very similar to Yona, so as you see there, putting the board in the water, very strong, so can't think of a more perfect role model to learn off than Yona. Good start from Ross, 7s to count for the judges, 54.6. And Yuho, some of the lower degree of difficulty dives are getting out of the way in this first round. Like I said, I think that's generally because it's a round where you get one of your more comfortable dives in, something that you're confident with. Lovely dive there from Yuho. Obviously, this dive's only a 1.5 somersaults. We've seen Jack do the 2.5 somersaults earlier on in the competition. But there you go. Yuho's very strong. He comes out nice and early of that dive, puts his feet in the water, then floats round for an upright entry with a great rip. So good dive from Yuho, very nicely executed. Ben Cutmore, again known for his platform. Another one that I spoke to earlier, I've said since 2 years ago. A lot can change. He's grown up massively down on the springboard. And there we see the challenges of the springboard. Compared to the platform, the springboard moves. Very simply put. And then when you're doing that hurdle step, you've got to get right on the end of the board. As you can see there, Ben was slightly over the end of the board, which means he's drifted out into the pool, not get up in the air as much as he would like, and that's why the judges have penalised him. Although he executed the dive nicely with a good rip, because it was so far forward and low, that's why you will see the lower judges' marks. Ollie with the inward 1.5 somersaults piked. Again, 2.4 degree of difficulty. Very nicely executed though. Got an 8 in there, unfortunately. Doesn't count. Top 2 and bottom 2 judges' scores get taken off. 51.6 though. Very nice start. Same dive from Jake. Penultimate diver of the round. Very nicely executed from Jake. A little bit far away from the board, which the judges might pick up on. Might get penalised a little bit for that. But great shape, good entry. So steady scores. Doesn't quite get up to that 51 points that we saw from our last diver. And to finish the round with the same dive, have Joseph. Good thing about having back-to-back same dives is you can compare, you can see the differences, and hopefully give you an idea of why the judges might give different marks. Nice dive there from Joseph. So good balance there. The balance is important in diving. You want to be as close to the diving board as possible without becoming dangerous. The closer to the board you get, usually that means you can get more height and therefore make the dives easier. So that's the end of our first round. You can see the results. Jordan in the lead with his nice inward 2.5 somersaults tuck. Jack and James there on the 67 point mark. Anthony and Yona. Not really any surprises that those guys are up there, all very experienced and talented divers. So we have top 8 go through to the final. If there is a guest in there, it will push it down by a maximum of 2 guests. So we have 3 guests in the event, only 2 of them can qualify. So even if they were to come top 3, unfortunately for the 3rd place person, they would not qualify. Nathan Bull, inward 2.5 somersaults tucked. Nice dive from Nathan. Up in the degree of difficulty here, 3.1. You can start to see how the divers squeeze the somersaults in though. You need that height to ensure you get all the dive in. Now here's that dive that I was on about earlier on. a flying inward one half somersaults pike. Flying means that you have to do half a somersault rotation in a straight position before making your shape. So as you see there from Anthony, the first half of his dive is in a straight position, and then he goes into the pike shape after. Sometimes with this dive, because it's such an uncommon dive, the judges find it quite difficult to judge. So there we see a relatively low score compared to his normal execution marks, but still up to 55 points, which, as you've seen from a normal in one half somersaults pike, that would be an extremely high score. So that might have paid off. Hayden, 14 half somersaults pike. Again, very consistent, nicely executed, upright, clean on the entry. The reason we see a little bit lower scores with the sixes to count is just the height and the shape. We want to see those legs flat on your chest. Judges want to see elegance. They want to see the dive look easy. And then that's when they'll reward you with the higher marks. On to our guest from Jamaica, Yona Night Wisdom. Back 2.5 somersaults tuck with 3.0 degree of difficulty. Now this is a 3.0 degree of difficulty, but I believe it's actually much harder to do. Just leaving it slightly short of vertical there. Yona with good start, good balance, kicked his feet in the right place, just didn't quite reach those arms back enough. So just hit the water off his shoulders, which is why the splash threw up a little bit. So like I said, that back 2.5 somersaults tuck is only 3.0 degree of difficulty, but I think it's actually harder than that. Jordan, current leader after round 1. Forward 3.5 somersaults tucked. Great tuck shape from Jordan. He gets in so tight, it spins so fast. The only problem with that is he finds it hard to come out of sometimes, which is why you've just seen it drift slightly over from vertical. Next up, Jack Law, reverse 2.5 somersault tuck. Ooh, slightly over there from Jack. Like I said, when the boys are so strong, you've got to make sure you come out a little bit earlier. Obviously, Jack is a very experienced diver. His achievements in the sport are barely second to many people in Great Britain. Matthew Dixon, forward 3.5 somersault tuck, 3.0. And a lovely dive from Matthew. Great entry, nice tuck shape, very neat and tidy. I think the sixes there, thankfully they don't count. I personally think they're a little bit harsh. Great dive from Matthew. Onto his Dive London teammate, Hugo. Of 3 Dive London dives in a row. Good dive from Hugo, forward 2.5 somersaults piked. Obviously 1 somersault less than we've just seen from Matthew, but that's the 0.4 degree of difficulty drop. So it's difficult to get the total score quite as high. Same dive from Tyler. So lovely dive, just that hurdle step. Again, causes problems. Tyler's right in the corner of the board, which is why he's almost facing towards us when he takes off. Therefore, the judges have to penalise that. If that dive was in line with the shape and the entry, then it would score high. But unfortunately, because it's facing towards us, the marks have dropped. James Heatley, reverse 1.5 somersaults, 2.5 twists, position 3. The positions, A is straight, B is pike, C tuck, and D is free. Great finish from James. The start was a little bit skipped out. Normally James has got great board timing, waits that board to ping him up in the air nice and high. Just left the board a little bit early, which is why he shot out a little bit far forward in the water. But again, James is so consistent. He always manages to find upright. And he has done again. Steady scores. Leon Baker, 3.1 degree of difficulty in 2.5 somersaults tuck. Great spin from Leon. Sometimes when you put your bum back on the start and your head down, it makes it hard to know where you are when you're spinning around. When you're spinning around, you usually use your eyes to spot for either the water or areas of the wall to know when to come out. When you tip your head down a little bit like that, sometimes it makes it hard, which is why he might have just rolled over a little bit there. Danny Mabbott, reverse 1.5 somersaults pike. And again, very nicely executed. Not the highest degree of difficulty list from Danny, but so far, so good on the execution. Kicked his feet out strong. Core was held tight, and good entry through the water. Maxwell Spencer is in 18th after the first round, so can he claw some marks back on this dive? He's done well off that hurdle step. Again, you saw when he steps down, I don't know if you could see his toes. All 10 of them look like they were over the end of the board, which then means you can't push as hard, because if you push too hard, you may slip. So then that results in not as much height, which then the judges will not give the marks out as freely. Ross Beattie, back 1.5 somersaults pike, 2.3 degree of difficulty. Not bad from Ross, good start, kicked his feet out right in the right place, just didn't quite get those arms back enough. So instead of going through the water with no splash, just caught the water with his shoulders, and that just kicks up a bit of splash, which is why we're only seeing the sixes. 3 sixes to count. 41.4 points there from Ross. Yuho for 2.5 somersaults pike. Good dive from Yuho. Great entry through the water, hardly any splash thrown up. It's a little bit loud on the board. I think sometimes when you come to the end of the board, you want to ride with the board. So when the board's coming down, you want to land on it. There, as the board's coming back up a little bit, Yuho's hit it, so you get a little bit of a stamping noise. But he's a strong boy, he still managed to jump up nice and high in the air and get a good dive. Ben Cutmore had an extra somersault on in the tuck position. 3.0, extra 0.4. Just a little bit back off the end of the board on that hurdle step, which makes it really, really hard to get all the somersaults in, especially when you've got 3.5 to fit in off the 1 meter. So you've got to make sure you get right in that board, and you can get as much height as possible to fit those somersaults in. Obviously, Ben is a specialist up on the platforms, so 1 meter is not quite his regular event, but it's good to see him doing it, and good to see him turning the 3.5 somersaults as well. Oh, Ollie, that's the trade-off between a 4.2.5 and a 4.3.5. Obviously, some of these boys are right in the middle, where a 2.5 is quite easy for them, and a 3.5 is maybe too hard. So Ollie's there. See, you can see that his 4.2.5 is very easy for him. He's gone flying over from vertical. He needs to be a little bit more composed when he comes out of that shape. Hold for an upright entry. Jake with the same dive, 4.2.5 somersaults pike. Great start from Jake. I love how he gets his arms up really tall on the start, sets it up nice and steep up in the air, and also gives you a chance to get into a great shape. So very, very nice start from Jake. 6.5 there from the judges. We see a little bit more with a little bit of a cleaner entry, but good dive overall there from Jake. I was impressed with that one. Up in the ante a little bit with a 3.1. Joseph. In 2.5 somersaults tuck. Started off with a 50-point dive. Can he get a little bit more on this one. I think it's going to be close. It's a little bit of a low finishing dive, that one. Only managed to squeeze in the entry. Needed to make sure you try to get a little bit more height in there, squeeze into that tuck shape, and then give you a little bit more time to get that entry. So there, not quite up to that 50-point mark, 41. Here we have our list. James Heatley taking the lead, just pipping over Jordan Holden. Again, Anthony Matthew up there as well now. Jack's dropped down slightly. We're looking for that top 8 finishers for the Brits. And then any 2 guests that are in there will have to beat the top 8. So at the moment, Yuho's just missing out on that final. Nathan Bull. Forward 3.5 somersaults tuck to start off the 3rd round. 3.0 degree of difficulty. There we go with the 3.5 somersaults. It's so much dive to fit in. So sometimes when you're low, finishing on the water, you have to try and squeeze in really, really tight, but Nathan's just rolled it over a little bit. Got to make sure you get out straight of that entry to get upright on the water. Anthony Harding, reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. Again, 3.0 degree of difficulty. Similar to his teammate Jack, he's gone flying over a little bit more than Jack. Very quick at the board again. He's a strong boy. He does a 3.5 somersaults on a 3 meter, so this can often be a lead up to that. However, we're looking for an execution this morning on the 1 meter. He's not quite pulled that out. Sometimes Anthony's awareness on the back and reverse dives can let him down a little bit. His forward and inward dives are very consistent. Got one of the most consistent and best front 4.5s going on the 3 meter springboard. Needs to get that consistency on those back and reverse dives too. Hayden Raymond dropping down to a back 1.5 somersaults pike, 2.3, so we're a little bit easier here. A little bit easier, but you've still got to get the execution in there. Not bad from Hayden. It's a bit steady. I think he looked a little bit nervous on that come out. Didn't want to go flying over like we've just seen from Anthony. Obviously on a different dive. When he stops his feet, just need a little bit more reach through the water to get a cleaner entry. Yono with his 3rd highest degree of difficulty, 3.2. He's also got a 3.3 and a 3.4 in there with a forward 3.5 somersaults pike, which is a massive dive for the 1 meter, and an inward 2.5 somersaults pike too. Great dive from Yono, good entry through the water. He's a little bit loud on the board, which is why it doesn't finish quite as high as he would normally, but he's so elegant through the water. Great rip. 7.5 to count. Big score there, 72 points on the 1 meter. Very good score. So Jordan, rank number 2 after the 2nd round. Back 2.5 somersaults tuck. Makes this dive so easy, like I've said before. It's actually a very, very hard dive to make. 3.0 is almost a harsh degree of difficulty. Jordan makes it very easily. Kicks out strong. Great dive there from Jordan. He's got a little bit more left in his entry. I know his back and reverse entries have been looking really sharp. A little bit more left in that entry, but 7's there in a prelim. You're going to be very happy with that. Nice dive, Jordan. So Jack up to redeem himself a little bit after his slight drop in the 2nd round on reverse 2.5. Reverse 1.5 somersaults, 2.5 twists. And that's more like it from Jack. That's an absolutely beautiful dive. Very comfortable on the board. Nice and high, brilliant entry. There we go. 8 points to count from the judges. We've got an 8.5 in there as well. I think that's the first 8.5 we've seen of the event so far. Great dive from Jack. Now, Anthony, your turn to follow that. Back 2.5 somersaults tuck. Hard dive. Matthew's got all the ability to make this dive very nice there. He just pulled it a little bit over from vertical. Like I said, it's a hard dive to make, so when you squeeze into that shape, you've got to ensure you come out of the right place. Matthews just kicked a little bit high up into the air. So his feet have drifted over from vertical. Oh, not a massive drama. Just a slight drop there from Matthew. Hugo. Again, 2.5 somersaults tuck, this time in the inward position. Get an extra point, 1 degree of difficulty too, which is somewhat strange because generally divers find this a little bit easier in 2.5 somersaults than back 2.5. Hugo snuck that in there. He's a little bit low finishing on the water, so the judges probably aren't going to go with him massively, but he's got a nice, neat and tidy entry. Same dive from Tyler. Expect a little bit more height here. Finish the dive a little bit higher, so get a bit of a more straight line through the water. Oh, maybe not. He's just thrown down on the water a little bit there on the start, which means he's missed out on quite a lot of height. So when you miss out on that height, obviously, you're leaving yourself a lot more difficulty to get the entry in. He just tucked his chin under, not got out straight, and rolled over on the entry. James Heatley, reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. The forward 3.5, back 2.5, and reverse 2.5 are all 3.0 degree of difficulty, so no change there. Again from James. So accurate. So accurate. Start slightly out into the pool. Well, that's a harsh criticism from me. Great dive, good kick, good entry. He's such a strong boy, James. Makes these dives with ease now. Been doing them for a number of years. And also keeps adding difficulty to his list too, which is very impressive. Same degree of difficulty, this time with the forward 3.5 somersaults tuck from Leon. Oh, very nice there. Impressive. To come out and pike out that high up in the water, in the air, sorry. Great dive. Leon represented Great Britain at the Junior Europeans. Came 9th, which, after seeing a dive like that, might have been disappointed with it. I think he definitely got the capability of getting those medals at the junior events with a dive like that. Danny again. That's his 3rd dive in a row. Very nicely executed. They've not got the highest degree of difficulty list here, but I don't think he's gone below a 6 yet, which is very important. You've got to remain consistent with those execution marks. Maxwell with a back 1.5 somersaults pike. Again, it's not the highest degree of difficulty, 2.3, so you need to make sure your execution marks are right up there. Unfortunately for Maxwell, it's not quite as high as he would have liked. Needed a little bit more elegance and entry from the judges to get the judges' scores, sorry. Ross Beattie up in the ante a little bit with a 3.0 reverse 2.5 tuck. You'll see him go nice and high in the air. You'll see him hopefully touch the water with the board as well. He's a big, strong lad. He's done well there. His hurdle step, I don't know if you could hear it on the stream, was very loud. Came down and stamped the board quite heavily, which means that the board is not helping you out. If anything, it's trying to hinder you a little bit there. So Ross, after that start, he's done well to kick his feet out in the right place and get an entry that keeps him within the pack. Yuho, 3.2, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist in the pike position. Dive number is 5152B. He snuck it in on the end again. We hear quite a loud stamp on the board, which makes it hard for these divers to get up in the air He's done well to sneak the entry in, and that's why we've stayed steady with 5.5. To get a little bit more, you need to try and be nice and quiet on that board. Let that board help you. The board's got to be your friend, not your enemy. Oh, very nice there from Ben. Reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. One of my favourite dives to watch on the 1 metre. I think it can really show a diver's elegance. When you spin around in a nice shape and then you put your feet out strong with good leg line and get the entry, it looks absolutely fantastic. And I think Ben has shown us a very good example of that there. Good dive, Ben. Ollie from Southampton with the back 1.5 somersaults pike. Very, very nicely executed there. I think sometimes in these events, when you do a low degree of difficulty dive, the judges can almost double penalise you because it's not quite as impressive to watch as some of the bigger dives. So I personally think there the execution was very, very nice. The judges might have been a little bit kinder to Ollie. Jake with a forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, and just clips his feet on the end of the board there. On the start, he's just thrown his bum back a little bit, which has meant he's come close to the board, and as his feet have come round, he's clipped it. It's really unfortunate there from Jake. You need to ensure you get those hips over the head, your arms up straight rather than chopping the start. Otherwise, unfortunately, it can bring you close to the diving board like that. Our last diver of the 3rd round, Joseph with a 14.5 somersaults pike. Again, nice entry through the water. It's going to be steady scores from the judges with the 6s. To get higher, we need to go up in the air a little bit more, get a little bit more of a tight shape, a little bit more balance. And then we'll see the scores go up to those 7 marks. Here we have our standings. James extending his lead slightly. 9 points in front of Jordan. Some very good scores to start off the day. Yona, Jack following up. And then top 8 qualify. We have 3 guests, Yona, Yuho and Jake. They will have to come in the top 8, but only 2 of them can qualify. Nathan Bull start the 4th round with a back 1.5 somersaults pike. This is the easiest dive of the competition that a few of the divers have been performing. But you have to make sure you perform it with good execution, and Nathan has done just that. Great entry through the water. A little bit of a leg crimp as he brought his legs off the board. He needs to try and just wait for that board a little bit more and get those legs straight out the board, and then you get 7s from all the judges and more. Anthony, the same direction, this time with an extra somersault from the back 1.5 somersaults pike. And the last dive to 2.5 somersaults tuck for Anthony. It's a good dive from Anthony. His last dive just let him down a little bit with the reverse 2.5 somersaults. He's redeemed himself massively there. And he spins so fast, he's got such a tight tuck shape. 6.5, 6.5, 7 to count, 60 points. That'll help him get back up the leaderboard. Hayden Raymond. Good dive from Hayden. Very nice and high up in the air. When he came out of his shape, he looked like he was a little bit unsure of where he was, but he realised very quickly and got his entry right in the water. So 7s to count there. Very nice dive from Hayden. Yona, the last of his 3.0s before he ups the ante a little bit in the next 2 rounds. Reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. Again, Yona, like his teammate James up in Edinburgh, very consistent on the entries, Probably not the start that he would have wanted. A little bit off the end of the board. But again, if you come out and put the entry in like that, then you're going to get the scores. It's going to put you up that leaderboard. So our current second place diver, Jordan Holden, with the same dive as Yona. Great dive from Jordan. I mentioned earlier that he's so strong and spins so fast, so the challenge for him is coming out of the dive at the right time. There, he's kicked out really nicely, nice and early. And he's managed to get his entry in. Jack Law. Extra point 1 of degree of difficulty compared with the reverse 1.5 here with the inward 2.5. Good dive from Jack. Sometimes with Jack, his inward and forward entries are not quite as reassured as his reverse entries. Although, I say that after he's dropped his reverse dive this morning, but he just doesn't look quite as confident on his pike out sometimes, but that's why it's just rolled over. But obviously, when you're such a strong athlete like Jack, you need to ensure you come out with plenty of time to make sure you get the entry. Some of these dives are almost too easy for him. Matthew Dixon with the reverse 2.5, very well executed there. Like we said, he's not a specialist down here, but he's becoming more of one. His main event, he would say, is the 10 meter, but he's a very, very talented diver, so I'm sure when he does decide to move down to the springboard, if he does ever decide to move down to the springboard, he will be a big challenger down there as well. Hugo Thomas, Dive London, forward 3.5 somersaults tuck. Nearly there from Hugo. There's a lot in that dive that was done right. His shape was good. He managed to hold onto the board and get up in the air nice and high. Just didn't look quite sure on that come out. Just got to, as easy as it may sound from me sitting up here, I can tell you it's not from my experience. Make sure you get out nice and straight on the entry so you go through the water clean. But as I say, make that sound very easy, which it definitely isn't. Tyler, that's the second hurdle step we've had that's facing towards us, unfortunately. I said earlier, he's such a talented diver. He was Junior European Champion last year on this board. Just those hurdle steps causing him issues. You can see in his aerial work, his entries, how good a diver he is. When you don't get those hurdle steps, you don't give yourself much of a chance. So James will be nice. We'll be happy to hear he doesn't have a hurdle step. Back dive. 2.5 somersaults tuck. Doesn't have that extra risk of walking down the board. Trying to land on the end. Our current leader. Great dive again from James. Sometimes this is the one in his list that maybe he doesn't score quite as high, but I think so far that might be up with one of his highest ones. 8s to count from all the judges there. Brilliant dive from James. I said about a 400 being a very, very good score for a prelim. He might be on track. We will see. Leon Baker, back 1.5 somersaults pike. Very strong kick out from Leon. When you're doing the 1.5, you've got to ensure you're confident, you know where you are and you come out. And he's done exactly that. He's put his feet out, he's looked where his feet are, he knows where he is in the air, and he's reached back, got a nice entry. A little bit more elegance in the shape and maybe a little bit more balance will give you those extra marks, but on the whole, nice dive. Danny up in his ante a little bit with the in between of some sorts of tuck. He's had a bit of a lower degree of difficulty list so far. This one right up to the 3.1. And right up to the 3.1, but he's kept his execution up high too. Nice diving from Danny. That'll be definitely helpful to get him into the final this afternoon. 65 points, 7s to count. Like I said, up in the ante of the degree of difficulty, but keeping the same execution quality. Well done, Danny. Nearly there from Maxwell. Thought he was going to get it. He kicked his feet out right in the correct place, just didn't reach his arms back enough. So instead of getting an entry with a rip and very little splash, just catches his shoulders on the water, which means the splash is kicked up and the judges will penalise you. On to Ross Beattie with an in-between of some sorts tuck. Currently in 8th place. Nice dive there from Ross. This has definitely seen a little bit of improvement over the last couple of years. Remember, Nationals a couple of years ago didn't finish quite as high as that. He's now piking out above the board and getting a great rip entry. Another 65 pointer there, 7s to count. Well done, Ross. Yuho. One of our 3 guests. The reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. Needs to keep those executions to get into this final. Not quite there from Yuho. Again, it's a very strong hurdle. He's a very strong boy. He looks really powerful on that board. He just threw his head back a little bit on the start, which generally means your awareness isn't quite as good. So as you can see, he's put his feet out a little bit early and landed short from vertical, meaning not getting the marks that he would have liked from the judges. So might just set him back a little bit in that race to the final. Ben with an in-between of some sorts tuck. Good dive from Ben. A little bit low finishing on the water, but very clean through the water. Nicely executed, good form. Good dive from Ben. As he builds his strength, that dive will become easier and easier, and then we'll be able to see him get even more scores. But 7s on an in-between off tuck in a prelim, definitely can be happy with that. Ollie with the reverse 1.5 somersaults pike. Very nearly. Looked very strong and confident with the come out. Just left it a hair short of vertical. That means he's not going to get those scores. So again, when he steps down from his hurdle step, I would say you could try and be a little bit straighter. He was a little bit dished almost. So when you get that, you don't get quite as much hip extension to give the somersault speed. Get those hips up on the start, just give him a little bit more speed and then be able to come out and get that entry. Onto our penultimate diver. Jake, as we've seen a couple of in-between halves like that now. It's a little bit low finishing, and when it's low finishing, it's hard to know where you are and get yourself out of that entry. So just rolled over from vertical a little bit. Our last dive of the 4th round. Joseph from City of Leeds Diving Club. Good dive from Joseph. Again, it's a little bit easier, this one, with a 2.4 degree of difficulty. Only a 1.5 somersaults compared to a lot of the divers using the 2.5 somersaults, but great dive. Let's see how we are standing after 5 rounds. Again, the names that you would expect probably up there by the top. We're still missing some big names in diving in this event. Dan Goodfellow, Ross Haslam, not competing in the 1 metre. Ross is not competing in the 3 metre, unfortunately, due to a stress fracture in his back. Dan will be competing in the 3 metre. So we'll see his name added to a star-studded list. On to the 5th round of dives. Nearly there from Nathan. Reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. His shapes are very good. He gets in very nice tight shapes with good toe form, which is very impressive. Sometimes the boys can lack a little bit of that elegance in the toes compared to the girls, but Nathan definitely isn't lacking in that area. Anthony had a little bit of a drop in round on his reverse 2.5 tuck. Redeemed himself with his back 2.5, and it's a steady dive there. Again, a great start from Anthony. So easy, so high up in the air, pikes out. So he's still going to get rewarded from the judges. Just drifted slightly over from vertical, so Anthony himself knows he's got more left in that, but again, that's going to help him get up those standings. Same dive from Hayden in between some sorts tuck. Just snuck it in there a little bit. You can see on the start, I don't know if you could notice, there's a little bit of a foot movement. So you could almost see both feet when he took off, which sometimes if the judges see that, can be deemed as dangerous, because if you're moving your feet, there's an opportunity that you might slip. So if the judges do see that and pick up on it, then they can penalise you. Yona doing the same dive, but this time in the pike position. So instead of 3.1 degree of difficulty, we have 3.4. So 0.3 is a big step up. Although with his long legs, it's a lot of dive to get round. He does it very well, though. Absolutely beautiful there from Yona. Like I said, it's a lot of dive to get in that. And when you've got legs as long as Yona, to bring them around the board, you've got to be perfect on the start, and he was just that. 7.5, 7 to count, 73 points. Great diving. 320 after 5 dives from Yona. Very good score. Should be up there with the high 300s. Jordan Holden been in second for the last few rounds. First 1.5 somersaults, 2.5 twists. Very nice from Jordan. That's a great entry through the water as well. Miles up in the air. Great twist position. Feet stayed perfectly together throughout, and a great entry. Jordan Holden, brilliant dive. 8s, 2 8s and a 7.5 to count. I think if that was in a final, we might be seeing even more, because that was an excellent dive from Jordan. Jack Law, 4 3.5 somersaults tuck. Just look how easy that is. Absolutely miles up in the air. Jumping above 3 metre, comes out about 2 metres left to spot his entry, and then gets his rip through the water. Great dive from Jack. 69 points, 317, 3 points behind Yona. All to play for the last round. Matthew Dixon, with a twisting dive, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist. He's fitting nicely. He's a little bit loud on the board, so he didn't quite get as much out of the 1 metre as he would have liked. But he stayed relatively consistent throughout. 6s there. Not going to be a drop. Should safely secure him through if he executes his last dive well. Yeah, not bad there from Hugo. It's just a little bit slow in the air. I think he squeezed into a nice tight tuck shape, but didn't quite get as much extension on the start to get the dive up in the air and spinning fast. So that's why it's just struggled to get all the way around to upright. But again, it wasn't pretty steady. Put it in, 5.5. It's not a drop. It's going to get points on the board for him. Tyler, another hurdle step. That's much more likely from the hurdle step on the hurdle step from Tyler. Sorry. First 2.5 twisting, 1.5 somersaults. Didn't quite get as much rotation in the somersault as he would like. Again, good toe point. Looked very smooth, but almost looked too relaxed with it. Just didn't quite get all the dive in. It's a real shame, because Tyler's a great diver. He's just had a couple of bad hurdle steps this morning. which might mean he's going to miss out on the final. James, same dive as Yona, the highest degree of difficulty dive in the competition this morning. In between of some sorts pike, 3.4 degree of difficulty. Again, similar to Yona, this dive doesn't give you much leeway in the legs going around the board. So you have to make sure you're brave enough to stand up tall, and those feet aren't going to be far away. If you don't, and you shoot your hips back too far, you're not going to be able to make all that dive. James gives himself plenty of room there. He's not dangerous whatsoever. Just rolls slightly over from vertical. Very nearly beautiful from Leon there. So high up in the air, kicked out really, really well. Just didn't quite get the entry that the kick out deserved. His kick out was so strong, you can tell probably doing his drills with Lindsay, coming out into a nice tight dish shape. Just didn't quite get the entry that that kick out deserved. So Danny upped the ante in the last round with the in-between half somersaults tuck and managed to keep his execution marks high. Unfortunately, this round with a forward 3.5 somersaults, he's not quite made it all the way around. Just landed short of vertical, and that, after a really good first 4 dives, might just let him down a little bit. It's a real shame because his execution so far has been very good. Maxwell with an in-between half somersaults with tuck. Again, another one that's quite low finishing. I've seen a few of those. You can see the difference between some of the more experienced, stronger guys that finish above the board and pike out after the tuck shape. Whereas some of the guys that don't find it quite as easy have to punch straight out. So you go from tuck straight to the entry. When you've got a little bit more time, you can afford to pike out that shape and get your entry. Ross doing a forward 3.5 somersaults tuck. Oh, I actually thought that looked really good on the start. He went right straight up in the air, good balance, dipped the board in the water, looked strong, but then he looks like he's thought the water was over by the other side of the pool side. He's just aimed his hands way too far forward, and he's left it massively short. It's a real shame because it was nice and high up in the air. Maybe just got a little bit overconfident with that good start. Yuho, forward 1.5 somersaults with 2 twists. This is the first one of these we've seen in the boys' event. Saw a couple this morning with the girls. Nicely executed from Yuho. Just needs a little bit of work on it, especially for a dive with 2.6 degree of difficulty. Needs to get those extra execution marks, do a little bit more form. Working on those that toe point, leg line, really important for the judges to see. But very nicely executed, good scores. Ben with another twist dive, this time the reverse spinning twist. 2.5 twistings with 1.5 somersault. And very nicely executed. Very good entry through the water. Good dive there. It's a hard dive to know how to come out and make sure you stop the twist on reverse 2.5 twisting, reverse 2.5 twister, sorry. You've got to ensure you come out, square those arms into a T, and it just stops the twisting rotation. If you over twist, the judges will penalise you. Ollie with an in with 2.5 somersaults tuck. Currently a little bit down the leaderboard. Can he claw himself back up? That's not bad at all. It's going to be steady scores there. Like I said, that one a little bit lower finishing, so he goes straight from the tuck to a straight line rather than having the pike out. But he managed to get it just about upright, a little bit short. 5, 5, 4.5 to count. He's a little bit more height in there, Ollie, and then the judges will be able to reward him a little bit more. Second to last diver of the round. Jake with a very nice executed back on half. Again, we're dropping down in the degree of difficulty, but it's really important that you ensure you don't drop down with the execution marks, because then you'll get doubly penalised compared to the other divers that have got the higher degree of difficulty dives. Joseph with the same dive. Again, nice entry through the water. It's not going to get massive scores from the judges because it's quite far away from the board. The judges want to see you go steep up in the air, good distance away from the board, and then they'll give you some higher scores. That's the reason for the lower scores from the judges. That's the end of our penultimate round. And here we see, again, the standings. James extending his lead. I said 400 would be a very, very good score for a prelim. If he gets 67 points on his last dive, then he'll do it. We've got a battle there for the final places. It's top 8, to remind you, go through to the final. Guests have to finish in those top 8, and only 2 guests can qualify. If there is a guest in that top 8, then it will give chance to an additional diver. So it's the top 8 British divers that will go through. Last round, Nathan Bull, forward 1/2 somersaults, 2 twists. That's what I was talking about on the reverse twist earlier. Very hard to stop the twisting rotation. Nathan's just carried that rotation on the forward twist there. So when you finish your 2 twists, you have to come out, check out with a T with your arms to basically stop the twisting rotation, and then pike at the hips. That will just stop your twist and then ensure you can go in with a square entry. Unfortunately, that's just over-twisted slightly there, which has resulted in lower scores. Anthony with a forward 3.5. I mentioned how confident and accurate he is with this type of dive. Similarly with the 4.5 on the 3 metre. Again, we can see that there. Maybe a little bit early on the pike out, but still 7s there. Good score from Anthony. 3.19 should be plenty enough to get through to the final. Hayden with a reverse 1/2 somersaults, 1.5 twists. So we saw this from the girls earlier. We've seen a couple with the 2.5 twists as well today. So he's dropping down the twist a little bit, but the reason for that is obviously there he's got his higher execution marks, 6.5s. Keep with the pack. And probably one of the hardest dives in the competition. Forward 3.5 somersaults pike. Only Yona and James are doing this, I believe. A lot of dive to fit in on 1 metre. And like we can see there, Yona's not quite got all the way out. It's so hard, especially when you dip the board in the water. It can almost take a little bit of the spring away for Yona. So when he's hit the water there, doesn't get quite all the way out of the board. A little bit forward, not quite fit all the somersault in. But for a morning, I think he'll take that. Good diving there from Yona. Jordan Holden finishing up with a forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, degree of difficulty 3.2. And another good dive from Jordan. We saw his reversed 1.5 somersaults, 2.5 twist with a beautiful entry previously. Not quite as clean as that on this dive, but again, very accurate, upright. Great list from Jordan, 385. It's a great score. He actually won last British National Championships with 379, so in a prelim he's already gone higher. Shows the progression some of these boys may have made over the last 2 years. It's the same dive as Jordan. If you notice, it may look a little bit different there from Jack. Jack decides to do his twist first before his somersaults. We call that in the diving world the full in, whereas when you do the twist after the somersaults, we call it the full out. So it's the same dive, the same 2.5 somersaults with 1 twist. Jack just decides to do the twist first. Well, very nicely executed from Jack. Great rip. Good morning. Lovely from Matthew. Beautiful through the water. Great pike out. I think we'll see some good scores there. Great dive. One judge didn't like it with a 6.5. The rest of them were in agreement, and that was a fantastic dive. Great to see Matt competing down on the 1 metre. Oh, nearly there. Hugo just missed his hands on the entry there, I think. As you go through the water, the aim is to grab one hand on top of the other, even a flat palm to hit the water. When your palm is flat, then hit the water, break the arms through the water to make a 3-bubble entry is the goal. The 3 bubbles, the reasoning for that is to hopefully push the water down with you to make no splash. That's more like it from Tyler. Real shame today from Tyler, because that's the type of diver he is. He's a great diver, got elegance in abundance, great rip, and that's what he can do. It's just a shame that we're not going to see him in this afternoon's final because of 2 bad hurdle steps. So 67 points to get 400 for James. An extremely good 1 metre prelim score. 4 3.5 somersaults pike, 3.3 degree of difficulty. And that'll definitely do it. Great diving from James. So this dive, let me tell you, is very, very difficult. Despite how easy James has made that look, very difficult. 407.25. That is a very, very impressive score. To get a silver medal, Jack Law got 402.9 last year at the European Championships. So that just shows you in a prelim how good a score that really is. Good dive from Leon. Similar to Jack, he's chosen to do the full in. So the twist before the somersaults. He's got a great rip through the water. I think the judges have just gone with the 6.5 rather than a little bit more, just because of a little bit of a lack of form. Maybe needs a little bit more leg form and toe point on that, but the dive itself was very good. Nice and easy and a good rip. Danny's dropping the degree of difficulty down a little bit. Back down to a 2.6 with a reverse 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists. He's got a nice entry on that. It looked a little bit stuck. You can see him really work hard in that pike shape to make sure he gets it upright. But he did work hard and he did make it upright. So therefore, 6.5s are awarded to him by the judges. Maybe just needed to stand it up a little bit closer to the diving board just to make it look a little bit easier, not quite as hard work. Another twist dive, Maxwell, forward 1.5 somersaults, 2 twists. And great dive from Maxwell. That's what I was talking about earlier with the pike and the T with the arms to stop the twist. You can see Maxwell does that. He finishes his 2 twists. He goes into a nice pike shape with his arms in a T, stops the twist dead, and then get the entry on the water. Good dive from Maxwell. Ross finishing up with a forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist. His biggest degree of difficulty dive of his list. And he's done pretty well with that. Maybe missed a little bit of entry. Could have squeezed a little bit tighter through the water, just kicked up a little bit of splash. But nice and upright. It's a lot of dive to fit in. He's done really well. 278.4 to finish. Yuho. Another one of our guests in and around the qualifying positions. Finishes up with a 3.1, so he's got the degree of difficulty to give him a chance to get into that final. And it's nicely executed. Again, upright. The judges are going to probably penalise that little bit of lack of form. But when you're getting 6.5 to count, which I think is the case, the case here, 60.4, 301, he's given himself a chance. Let's see if he can get into that top 8. Ben finishing up on his lowest degree of difficulty, back 1/2 somersault pike. Currently in 6th position. And very nicely executed there from Ben. Beautiful leg line through the water, excellent entry. We see a first 9 of the event this weekend. I think very deservedly so. It's nice to see those easier dives when they're executed with class. It's nice to see them rewarded because sometimes, because they're easier, the judges don't give the execution marks out as easy, which, in my opinion, if you do a dive as nice as that, it deserves to get those high marks. Forward 1.5 somersaults with 2 twists from Ollie. Slight over rotation on the twist. Judges have slightly penalised him for that. We'll leave him in 16th position at the moment. Our penultimate diver of the competition, Jake. Our last of 3 guests too. Trains in Leeds. First 2.5 somersaults took. Probably left himself with a little bit too much to do to get into the final. Just left that one a hair short as well. Very comfortable on the board. Nice hurdle step. He stepped down really straight. Gave himself great timing. You could almost not hear him on the board. Just was a little bit slow in the shape. Needed to get a little bit more extension to give yourself a little bit more spin speed. Then he can get his dive all the way around and get upright. But and our last diver of the event, Joseph Nicol, with a back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists in the free position. This is the first one of these and the last one we'll be seeing. Again, with the back dive, you have to make sure you get the balance. If you lean back, like Joseph's done a little bit there, it's really hard to stop the rotation. So you can just see him drift over from vertical. Needs to be a little bit more upright on the start, push his hips up in the air, and keep upright. So, there we have our results. James Heatley, I said 400 would be a very good score for a prelim, and he's done that by 7 points extra. Great diving, top 8 final. Yona in there as a guest, so we will push down to 9th position to get into the final. We'll see that when it flicks over to the next screen. So Yuho has also just squeezed in, I think. He's beat Danny, who is in 10th place. Danny will be our last British finalist. Tyler, unfortunately, down 18th. Probably not what we would have expected. He's a very talented diver, so I expect to see him come back strongly on the 3 metre. So we're going to take a little bit of a break for lunch. We will be back at 2:15 for the mixed 3 metre synchro and the mixed 10 metre synchro, which are going to be run together. So we will see you later on.
Attention, please. Here's something I bet you didn't know. Not all supplements are created equal. At HealthSpan, our omega-3 oil is sustainably sourced from the South Pacific Ocean. We find our turmeric on the southern slopes of India. And our cod liver oil comes from the cold, crisp seas of Greenland. We work hard to seek out the best ingredients for all our supplements because that's the HealthSpan way. We're healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements in-store or direct to your door.
SIM-only plans? There are always so many tempting options. So you jump headfirst into a long contract, which keeps you locked in for 12 months.
Somebody let me
At Labara, we offer great prelim plans and total flexibility. You can get 10 gigs of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £10 a month. And you can change or cancel anytime.
Now I feel free.
Buy now at labara.co.uk.